Hi, everybody. This is Ian Durius, and on behalf of Compassion International, thank you for being part of our holiday webinar. And me calling it a holiday webinar is my clever way to only have one webinar in November and December. So this is our holiday webinar for Thanksgiving and Christmas, and we're grateful that you can join us. Our webinars are monthly online events that are designed to help you in your efforts to release children from poverty in Jesus' name. Tonight, we'll focus on the children of compassion who have been waiting for a sponsor for the longest time. Our guest tonight will help us understand the unique challenges connected to our longest waiting children. And I'll introduce her in a moment, but before that, here are a few thoughts that may help you get the most out of this webinar. First of all, we love questions. So you're welcome to submit questions at any time by typing into the questions box in your GoToWebinar control panel. We'll try our best to answer your questions, but if we're not able to, the meeting platform we're using will document your questions so that we'll be able to respond to you via email. So again, we love questions, and you're free to ask your questions by sending them to us through the questions box. Also, you may be listening to a recording of this webinar, and you too can still ask questions. Just email them to advocate@compassion.com. Again, that's advocate@compassion.com. I'm happy to introduce you tonight to our guest. Her name is Amy Zabka, and she's here to help us understand the unique challenges connected to our longest waiting children. Amy has been with Compassion for over 5 years and is currently serving as the Marketing and Development Availability Manager for Compassion USA. Her passion for our longest waiting children has driven her to implement many changes to Compassion processes in order to help prioritize long waiting kids. Amy has been married for over 8 years, and she has 3 children, 7, 6, and 3. Those are their ages, not their names. She's an active member of the Ascent Church in Monument, Colorado, and in her spare time, she loves to spend time in the mountains with her family. Thank you very much for joining us tonight, Amy.
Hi, Ian. Thank you so much for having me, and thank you all for taking a little time out of your busy day, especially so close to Christmas, to listen about long waiting children.
Absolutely. So, about longest waiting children, where would you like to start?
All right, well, let's just go ahead and jump in then. I wanted to start out and just ask anybody to take a look here at these cute little faces. I just wanted to see if you maybe recognize any of these children on this slide. These children have been to a range of different events over the last year. Some of them have gone to Compassion Sunday events and been talked about there. Some of them have gone to radio events or music events, some of the music events being a Casting Crowns event, Michael W. Smith, or 10th Avenue North. A couple of these children have been to many festivals, such as Creation Fest, Fish Fest, or The Thorn. One of these children has been on the Mobile Experience, traveling around the United States and partnering with churches. Some of these has just been presented at churches. All of these children have been on the internet. And a handful of speakers have been honored to have these children in their orders. And what they all have in common now is that these 5 children are the longest waiting children in the unsponsored pool. So of all the children, and at any given time, the United States unsponsored pool has about 100,000 unsponsored children in it. These 5 have waited 15 months for a sponsor. These children are what I like to call long waiting children. They're what I'm passionate about. I love to look at every aspect of my job through their eyes that have waited 15 months to get the good news that they've been chosen, that somebody chose them, as somebody special to love them, to receive letters from them, and to be a special part of their life. So I just wanted to clarify a couple of terms throughout my presentation. The word long waiting children and the term priority children, they're synonymous in how I'm talking about them. Because they are so long waiting, we consider them the priority in needing to get them sponsored. They have waited an extraordinary length of time. And so that's one synonymous term I may throw around, one or the other, but I mean the same thing. The unsponsored pool is, again, all the children that the United States has, but they're unsponsored. They're still waiting for a sponsor, so they're circulating and going to different events and things like that. So when I say the pool or the unsponsored pool, that's one of the things that I mean. So just to clarify a couple of terms before we start, today we are focusing on long waiting. And for me, a long waiting child is any child that's waited over 6 months for a sponsor. So the research tells us that most children will receive their sponsor within 3 to 5 months. That's kind of the magic range for when a child will get a sponsor. These children have waited anywhere from 6 all the way up to, like those children on the first slide, 15 months to get a sponsor. So these are my priority and what I'm looking for, creative ways and creative strategies for getting them sponsored. We did have a video to show here. Sadly, the audio isn't working this evening, but it's a great little video, and we'll try and send out the link afterward to try and get this out. It's a beautiful video, and it talks about a little girl named Helena. And Helena had waited 18 months for a sponsor, and she lives in Indonesia. And kind of what they're conveying is how hard it is for Helena to still feel value within herself when she's waited for 18 months and watched all of her friends get sponsors and letters and all these caring little things, and she's just waiting and waiting. They interview her mom, and they talk to her and ask her, how hard is it to see your child unsponsored? And she said it breaks her heart, and that she watches her daughter pray to God every day for a sponsor. And sometimes Helena just cries and says, all the other kids have a sponsor, why can't I? So really some of those hard issues that make a child feel like they're less because of how long they've had to wait for a sponsor. So again, it's a really gripping video, and I think it really does a good job of showing the problem through the child's eyes. And that's really how we need to look at it as well. We need to look at how long has this child been waiting expectantly for someone to pick and choose them.
Amy,
So
could you mention that? Could you mention the name of that, the title of that video once again, please?
Sure. The title of the video is "The Wait is Over."
The wait is over. Yeah, and we'll make sure that we send a link soon after the webinar so that our audience can see that. Great.
Yes. Yes, it's a great video, and it was just released in October to the United States. We're hoping that some events are going to start using this video as well as they're trying to put some focus on long waiting and keep the buzz going kind of for that. So yeah, we'll send that link out. But anyway, that's through the sponsors, through the child's eyes of what it's like to wait. So I guess as we watch the rest of this presentation, just kind of think about that through the child's eyes and what they're going through. About a year ago is when we started, about a year and a half ago, really, when I entered into this role, we took a new stance on looking at long-waiting children. I think before, we just kind of thought that long-waiting children were inevitable, that, it was just a problem. There wasn't too much that we could do about it. And I really wasn't satisfied with that. I think there is so much importance that we need to place on these children specifically, and we need to end their wait as soon as we possibly can. So last year, in about September, October timeframe, we really put together a big comprehensive strategy on how can we focus on these children specifically and make them the highlighted children at events. The first part of our approach here on the slide shows that before we started our strategy last year, only about 15% of any order that went out to any event anywhere in the United States got those children that had waited 6 months or more for a sponsor. So 85% of the order that went out were kids that had waited less than 6 months. And I really kind of thought that was backwards. We had so many long-waiting children that we really needed to prioritize them in a different way. So the after piece of the pie graph there shows that we started sending up to 60% of every order was those long-waiting kids, with the goal that they would be out constantly. We need them out at events and out on tables and out being talked about so that they don't have to wait for 2 more months or 3 more months. We need to get them sponsored that month. You know, we can't keep letting them go to event after event. We really needed to make a focus on getting them sponsored then. A different part of our approach was, and this was about a year ago as well, we started putting overnight shipping labels into every package. And the theory behind that is it is a little more expensive than the ground package. And you know, we're very aware. But the positive of that was that after an event, a child could get sent back to the Global Ministry Center in Colorado Springs and be out at a new event the very next weekend. We were cutting weeks off of times that they were just sitting in a box. You know, the packet was just sitting in a box somewhere. And by shipping them back overnight, we're able to get them right back out to another event. So their opportunities for sponsorship shot way up once we started implementing the overnight shipping labels. And that's still a practice that's in use today, and I don't foresee it going anywhere. The return on that investment has been huge in how quickly we've been able to get kids out again and again, especially those long waiting ones. And then if you notice, if you're ever volunteering at a table or part of the logistics of an event, you'll notice that when you open the box from Compassion, all the priority children are rubber banded together and separated from the rest of the children. They have this little half sheet, which is at the bottom of the slide there, with a little explanation of why these children are considered priority. If you see the picture in the label, all children and all child packets that have waited at least 6 months for a sponsor get that little teal priority symbol on their packet, and that's so that event table staff and volunteers can see that and immediately make those children the priority. They also have the number of months that they've been waiting below. A child that's not a priority child does not have that information shared anywhere on the packet, how long they've been waiting. Only when they hit that priority status do we let somebody know how long they've been waiting. Maybe as a little extra tug on the heart to say, you know, I've already been waiting 6 months, just to kind of bring some awareness to them. So anyway, the package looks different. They're bundled differently. They have the little half sheet of paper explaining why they're different, and they have the little teal square on the packet. So there's a bunch of ways that we're trying to alert people that, hey, these children, they have a really high need right now, and they've been waiting a long time. So what can we do? How can we prioritize them at the event? We've also been working really hard on raising awareness. I've given a presentation similar to this probably 10 times in the last year, with the hope that I can get a fire going in people and that I can get them to be excited about long waiting and wanting to end the wait for some of these really long waiting children. I've talked to our contact center. You know, when people call in and they're ready to sponsor another child, the first place they look is our long waiting child list to see if right then, right there over the phone, they could end some child's wait. You know, and we can always make that our priority when we're thinking about things and working through our daily work. How can we do that? The picture on the screen is actually a backdrop that the events team has just created. So these backdrops kind of stand behind a Compassion table, maybe at a concert or an event of some sort, maybe a conference. And this one is really special to me because this was created in response to me giving their team this presentation. So this kind of backdrop for the wall is all about long waiting children. Why are they waiting? And then there's the little hashtag towards the top that says the wait is over. So how can we affect the wait, and how can we end the wait for a child? So some of these marketing materials are being created because of the buzz that this has created. And we need to keep raising awareness and keep talking about it so we can keep getting people excited and ending the wait for some of these long waiting kids. Another really big way that we've been able to influence change on the longest of long waiting, and when I say longest of long waiting, I would mean like a year or more long waiting, would be to put them on the internet, so compassion.com. And what's been so special about compassion.com is they have hundreds, if not thousands, of visitors every day. And these children have a lot of availability. They're seen many times a day, and their chances of being chosen by a sponsor on the website is actually pretty high. So this is one of our best strategies, I think, moving forward for how we can prioritize the longest of long waiting. If you look at the graphic on the screen, this is a screenshot taken straight from compassion.com, but the little African boy on the right, and it says, a child who's been waiting a year needs you. And when you click that link, it shows you only children that have waited at least a year for a sponsor. The web team has also put the little heart next to all the pictures of children who've waited at least 6 months for a sponsor, and then not only broke it down to months, but broken it down to how many days, and again, through their eyes, have they been waiting to get a sponsor. So a couple of unique tugs on the heart and a lot of visibility and interest on the internet has really helped us tackle those top long waiting kids and get them sponsored. So that was one pretty effective area from our approach. And if you look at this graph, it really is working. And over the last, the last year has been really focusing on how do we get no child to wait a year for a sponsor. We want every child to wait under a year. So last October, when we really found this charge and started tackling it, we had over 7,500 children who had waited a year, as opposed to October of this year when we had 74. So that's a 99% drop in the number of children that we've waited for a year for a sponsor. And this is what we love to see, and this is what we need to keep seeing. And last year's charge, like I said, was to get children under 12 months. And our charge for the upcoming year is we don't want any child to wait longer than 9 months. And that's going to be a big undertaking. It's part of why we need to keep the buzz alive and keep people excited about getting long waiting children sponsored. We want to see a graph similar to this next year, but for 9-month waiting children, and hopefully have none at 12 months waiting. So that's really where I wanted to recruit the help of advocates, the advocate network, and the advocate teams, because you guys are on the front lines. You guys get to talk to and touch and be a part of so many sponsorships. I think it's incredible, and I know that you guys being fired up about this and having the information, because you already have the heart to share this, we can do great things through the next year for these long waiting children.
Yeah, that's a pretty amazing drop there. Kudos to you and your team to really make those numbers really small. And yeah, I think I sensed, and I just know our advocates well enough to know that that is a trend that they love to see and want to participate in. So this is great. And before you keep going, Amy, this is great. Just a quick reminder to our audience, we love questions, and I've been receiving some, and I've actually been able to answer some, which is good. So keep them coming. If there's something I can't answer, we'll ask Amy, or maybe Amy and I can team up on the answer. So sorry about that interruption, Amy. You can go ahead.
That's okay. Thank you, Amy. So to do more, we have to stay focused. To move from the 12-month no child waiting longer than 12 months to the 9-month threshold, I think we have more work to do. As of today, maybe 20 minutes before I logged on to give this presentation, we had 24,042 children waiting at least 6 months for a sponsor. So given the total size of the unsponsored pool, it's roughly 1 in 4 children fits that criteria. So 1 in 4 child packets at least will have that little priority symbol on there, and those are the children that we're going to focus on through this next year, because there is still a lot of work to do. And every month that goes by, we get really excited because we've effected some change and we've dropped some numbers. But at the same time, you have to think every child that was 8 months waiting last month now just aged to 9 months waiting if they're still unsponsored. So every month we have new children coming into this category. And so it's got to be our job to prioritize those children and systematically work down and down and down to make sure that we're affecting lasting change and not just that we solve the problem in the short term. If we stop talking about kids waiting more than a year for a sponsor, I guarantee a couple kids will slip through the cracks and get up to a year waiting for a sponsor again. And that's the last thing we want. We just have to keep our eyes and keep our focus for this next year. And not that this is all you guys' job, a lot of what I've shared is what I've been working on for the last year, and I have a plan for this upcoming year as well. So just to bring you up to speed on what my plan is and my goals are, my goal is to keep long-waiting children on everyone's radar. I'm pretty sure you can ask anyone in the Global Ministry Center about a long-waiting child, and they would say, oh, I know Amy Zabka, because that's all I talk about. It's all I want to do. It's all I want to present about. Every minute of every day when I have free time, I'm trying to figure out a way to get a long-waiting child sponsored. So keeping it on our mind that it's all of our problem and we're all part of the solution is a big part of my strategy. Creating marketing materials for long-waiting children. This is something, again, it didn't exist last year. This wasn't anybody's priority last year. But because of the buzz that we're creating, we now have that, the wait is over video. We have that backdrop that the events team is going to start using at events. People are trying to figure out how to create entire events around getting long-waiting children sponsored, which is so exciting to me. And we just want to keep them going in that direction. You know, how can we help and support? I've been a part of the Compassion Sunday team. Compassion Sunday will be in April of next year. We're already starting to plan that now, and they are going to use a long-waiting theme for this year. So they're going down and they're making a video in Nicaragua of a little girl who's waited a long time for a sponsor, and similar to the Wait Is Over, but a little bit different. So Compassion Sunday events this year will have a lot of focus on long waiting, which makes me really excited. We just need to keep creating more to make it easier to have these events and have people understand long waiting children. And a big reason, you know, why I'm presenting this evening is pushing this message outward. How can we get sponsors, volunteers, speakers excited about the importance of long waiting children? Like Ian said, I presented to his team first. And because of that, we have this webinar going now. And any ways that I can get the message out there or talk to more people about long waiting, that's going to be my goal in this upcoming year, because we have to keep our focus on it. And then how you can help. When you have an opportunity, can you, in your sphere of influence, talk about long waiting children? Can you get someone else really excited about long waiting children if that's something that's really close to your heart? You do have the option when you are in the advocate portal ordering ordering packets, child packets. You do have the option to order a long waiting packet. There's a little comments field that you can add that to. And I would say if you have a guaranteed sponsorship, you know, somebody says, I'm in, just, you know, I'd love to see a child packet. Those are the perfect instances for a long waiting packet to be ordered. The packet wouldn't sit for weeks and then come back unsponsored. You know, that would only add to that child's wait time. But when we have an instance where we have a guaranteed sponsorship, it's perfect. You've effectively ended that wait. So those are a great time to order a long waiting packet. Or if you just need to get people excited about it, it is an option that you have. Trying to educate other advocates, new sponsors, table volunteers. You guys are a very small group of the Cumulative Advocates Network, and I would love to keep this fire spreading. So if you're at an event or you're working a table or you're at church and there's an opportunity to mention, oh, you know, do you see this little teal box here? These are long waiting children. Let me tell you, you know, why this is so special to me, or something like that. There's some real opportunities to affect change and get other people excited who didn't even get to see or hear this webinar this evening, who haven't seen the video, who don't know anything about it. And then trying to help get these children sponsored at an event first. I have one advocate. His name is Neil, and he's local here in Colorado Springs. He was one of the groups that I have presented to before about long waiting children. And since he's made it his personal mission to get every long waiting child in every order he receives sponsored, and he's done it almost every single time. He loves to talk to people about them. He gets really excited, and it's become like his personal mission. So he'll come up and tell me, oh, I got an order last week with 42 long-waiting children in it, and I got 40 of them sponsored. You know, and he's so proud, and I love that because it's a great way to kind of be personally motivated and personally take charge of something that you care about in your life. So yeah, that's kind of my hope, is that we can keep this message moving out, moving forward, and getting more people excited and interested in long-waiting children, and how we can keep them sponsored quickly.
Great. Yeah, thank you, Amy. Yeah, time for questions. And I actually have a couple to run by you, but before I share those with you, for those of you listening in, just another encouragement to send your questions in. No question is too small, and if between Amy and I can't answer it, we'll be able to answer it soon after. We can email you back, because this meeting platform will document any question that you ask in the question box. So Amy, could you just clarify for our audience the difference between a child who is registered and a child who is sponsored? So for instance, the children that we're talking about, the long-waiting children, are registered, but of course we're looking for sponsors for them. So what's life like, or what is the difference between a registered child and then also a child when they get sponsored?
Yeah, that's a great question. You're right. Once a child is registered, they're fully a part of Compassion's program, from the aspect that they get to start attending the project. And, you know, if there are meal supplements, things like that, they get to take full advantage of the services inside their project. But what they don't have is a sponsor. And children always know the name of their sponsors. They speak so fondly of their sponsors, and even if they've never received a letter, they still almost always know their names. It's just a really special bond that they get to have, and it gives them hope when they know that someone on the other side of the world who has no idea who they are saw enough value in them to, you know, want to sponsor them and be a part of their life. That's very, very valuable for them. Knowing somebody is praying for them and they get to pray for somebody, and building that relationship, that's the biggest piece that's missing for an unsponsored child, is they have no relational piece to pray and to give encouragement and to get encouragement from by having a sponsor.
Yeah. So to be, for instance, when we're representing these kids out, as we have these conversations about sponsorship and recruiting sponsors, it would be more accurate to say, you know, they are benefiting now, but the biggest benefit, or one of the benefits that we hold closely, that relationship with a sponsor, they're not benefiting from that. So that will allow them to have that, I guess, the full circle of sponsorship, and also their support would then come from a sponsor, not necessarily the Unsponsored Children's Fund. So just to be accurate, we want to say, hey, they are getting this attention, they're just not connected with a sponsor yet. How accurate is that?
Yeah, that's exactly right. You've got it. Mm-hmm.
Very good, very good. Okay, here's another question for you. And maybe it's a question / idea, and maybe you've already thought about this, but you know, we often have advocates handing out brochures, so it's not necessarily a child packet, but a brochure. Is there a way to request that the brochures that we hand out, if they do come back with our source code, that they would be connected with a long-waiting child, or how did that process work? Or maybe, actually, you know, sorry, maybe the bigger question is, how can we be proactive in having priority, these children be the ones that we end up getting sponsored?
Yes, that's a phenomenal question, too. We have a couple of tests actually currently going on right now. One church is testing not even having a child packet, but just the ability via a brochure to say, I want the longest waiting. I don't care if that longest waiting is a boy or a girl or what country they're from. My heart is to sponsor a child. And so they're testing to see, does that work, and can people make that heart connection without looking at a photo? And the way that that's beneficial for us is that we as Compassion can grab these children at any time. So if there's a child that's 16 months waiting, if it's at an event, no one else can sponsor that child, and that's been the really challenging part of this problem, is that because the child packet can only go one place at a time, if it's at the wrong place or a place where, there's a different opportunity that really would have been a guaranteed sponsorship, we can't do much about it. So the exciting thing about a brochure or somebody just calling into the contact center and saying, hey, I would love to just sponsor a longest waiting child, is that if we just keep a pool, for example, those 5 children that I showed at the start of the presentation, those are simply sitting on a list, and anybody who calls, or if their child departs and they need a substitute child added to their account, anything like that, those children will be picked first. So they're strategically available because we need them to be available right at the right time. So we're experimenting with a lot of these. How can we make sure that the right children are available at the right time for a sponsorship? And some of that's going to be through brochures or little cards to where we're maybe not actually having the physical child packet in their hand, but they're just saying, hey, yeah, I'm willing to help. What child do you have for me?
Yeah, well said. Yeah, it's almost like it's a good problem in that there are less and less long-waiting children, but because there's less of them, it gets a little bit trickier, it seems like, to make sure they're in the right place at the right time so that they can be connected with a sponsor.
That's exactly right.
Yeah. Here is a thought that came in from Rick Bellflower. I really appreciate him. Rick, thank you for sending this in, because this is reflective of my heart and Amy's heart as to why we even want to share this webinar, so that hopefully this information will help you in your advocate ministry. And Rick writes that he was at a long-waiting child event last weekend, and when someone was kind of thinking along the lines, like just wondering if they would sponsor, Rick was able to share, the difference between that child's plight and being a long-waiting child, and so they ended up sponsoring. So we can speak educatedly to someone at a table or someone at your church about, hey, all these kids that we represent through the child packet need a sponsor. But it seems like, there's the different kind of challenge here because these children have been waiting for so long. So, very good. Yeah, and Amy, I'm sure you've heard stories from the field or maybe even secondhand. Is there anything that you could share to kind of give a bit more color to some of the things that you've been talking about so far?
Yeah, because this is kind of a new focus, the field and the countries didn't initially have a lot of information around what a long-waiting child goes through. Just a couple of nuggets that I've heard really recently, though, is if a child is waiting a very long time for a sponsor, their likelihood to depart the program before they even get a sponsor goes up incrementally every month. So the longer they go, the more likely they are to leave, and the more likely they are to be disengaged if they do get a sponsor further down the line. So we're trying to work on those things too, because we're affecting the child's experience. When they're registered, they say, okay, we want to take your picture because we want somebody to pick you and we want them to sponsor you. And when that doesn't happen, sometimes they feel maybe a little tricked or a little duped. And some families have left these projects because their children have been unsponsored for too long, and they feel like maybe they were taken advantage of, or maybe it wasn't what we promised it would be. So it's more us too trying to keep our word and saying, hey, we want to register you in this program and find someone to kind of love on you and support you. So when that doesn't happen, that's really hard on the child and the family. So trying to honor that a little bit better is a big message I've been seeing from Global Program, is that they're doing a better job of loving on the children when the children get a sponsor in a timely manner. It just increases their happiness and their engagement in the program.
Yeah, that's well said. I remember it was maybe 2.5 years ago, I was part of a sponsored tour to the Philippines, and they just really rolled out the red carpet for us, and it was really, like, literally they put us on a parade through the neighborhood, and I felt kind of embarrassed, and I thought it was almost like, who are we that people would just come out and wave at us and wait for us to come through their town? But one of the the student center workers told me, she said, by you visiting us, you've validated our work here. Because we talk a lot about sponsors, and, maybe parents in the community see the benefits of these sponsors, but to actually see the sponsor and come visit, it really validates what they do. So I feel like that story is on the other side of what you just shared, Amy, where, these parents, these families are told, hey, we would like to get your child connected with a sponsor, and the longer they wait, the longer they just wonder, like, is this valid? Is this a true thing? And so to be able to work on this side, especially hard, so that these children aren't feeling duped or what have you, I think that would be a really great ministry to have.
Absolutely.
That's great. Well, our time is winding down, but I want to keep it open long enough for questions, and I have another one for you, Amy. You've been working on some of the processes behind the long waiting children packet, and I was wondering if you could kind of share a little bit, not to get too detailed necessarily, but a little bit about how these child packets are handled differently than other child packets. Like, so for instance, is there a way after an event that these child packets are deconsigned more quickly so that they can get to another place more quickly?
Yeah, that's a great question, and yeah, you have answered it right there. A lot of my charge the first few months when I was focusing on this problem was I need the right children to go to the right event, everything has to be right every time. They can't go to an event where maybe one child packet out of 50 is going to get sponsored, because the likelihood, is that we're going to only add 2 months to their wait times. So being strategic about which events they even go to start with has been pretty critical. Some events, for example, some church events will get almost every single child packet sponsored every time. And it's because they're deeply invested with Compassion. They have built this great relationship. Those are the kind of events where we want to send the most long-waiting kids. So it even starts at the beginning by making sure that the right kids go to the right places. So a festival maybe wouldn't get quite as many sponsorships, but they'll get a lot of packets because they like variety and they want people to be able to choose. But the likelihood that every packet is going to get taken and sponsored at that event is probably kind of low. So sending long-waiting kids to that is essentially adding, 2 months onto their wait time. That's the average length of time one child goes to one event is 2 months. So from the time they get printed and sent out and shipped, and and then it comes back, it's 2 months. So first of all, it's getting them sent to the right place. And then with that overnight shipping, we've been able to get those children back a lot faster, which has been really helpful because that 2-month window maybe just got cut down to a month. So when we have them back, the distribution center prioritizes those priority kids first. So those kids are deconsigned right away, and we have a process, and when they're deconsigned, they're available immediately to go to another event, within a second.
Yeah. So
their chances, literally they could come in the Colorado Springs doors and go back out in the same day if if that's what it dictates. And that's what we needed. We needed them to have a lot of opportunity, and that they couldn't wait that full length of time every time they went out to an event. So there have been a lot of kind of logistical things that we've adjusted to try and make sure that they are always the priority, they're treated with priority, they're sent with priority, they're shipped back with priority. Everything about them has to be our top focus because this problem is so big. So.
Yeah, that's great. Well, just a last call for questions. So if you're listening and if you have a question, you're welcome, and I encourage you to type it into the question box. And in the meantime, Amy, what you were just talking about reminds me of a concept that was outlined in The Tipping Point by Malcolm Gladwell several years ago. And he suggests that when ideas tip, or when projects or notions kind of start to pick up steam, it's not necessarily because of these big changes that happen, but it's really these small incremental things that work in concert to allow that idea to tip. And so it just seems like what you're just sharing, what we're trying to do is, like, for instance, with the processes in the background, it's really hoping that this idea tip by these little changes, how packets are deconsigned and how they're shared, with a view toward hoping that a big change does happen as a result. And we saw the number, we saw the line graph. So it seems like things are working, that God is at work regardless, and it's just so cool to see how this may be reflected in that too.
Yeah, I
Very
agree.
good.
And
yeah.
we're always trying new things. We're always trying different ways to, will this work? Can this help things? And you're right, it's just a mix of little things. So that was part of why the approach slides were numerous, is that it took a lot to get enough steam going to start to bring those numbers down.
Mm-hmm.
And I'm always open to ideas or suggestions. Again, this team is so on the front lines of what, of a sponsor's first experience, or questions that might come up, or how can we better equip you, as table volunteers, as advocates, as people who are speaking on behalf of Compassion all the time, so that you're properly equipped with the right information about long waiting, or how can we help? That's always something I'm asking for, is feedback on what ideas do you have, what can we try, because we are open to try anything.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
I'd love to hear feedback on that too.
Yeah, well said. Well, good. Well, audience, you have an invitation. So if you have thoughts and ideas, and in fact, I know one that I'll be forwarding to you already, Amy, offline here. So I really appreciate the Advocate Network for many reasons, but for one reason, how they're just really focused and very practical about some of the things that we do at Compassion. So to be able to kind of share a suggestion from the point of view of someone who's at the table or someone who's approaching those churches, all of us have been are invaluable. So, maybe we can just close with this. So what are your hopes, Amy, for the long-waiting children process, this challenge over the next couple of years? What are you hoping to see?
Yes, I am hoping, again, my goal for this upcoming year is no child waits more than 9 months. That's the USA's goal. There are other arms of Compassion, for example, Compassion Canada, Compassion UK, and they have the same long waiting struggles that we do. So I'm hoping that if we can keep working on this, we can also, in a way, be a light for them and give them some guiding tips and some, lessons learned that we have, so that they can fix, their long waiting troubles too. We have a lot of good that we can do, and the more excited people are and the more it gets talked about, I think, the more steam this has to continue and to grow and to become a big piece of what we're doing. I'm essentially trying to change the culture, and I know that every child is important and every sponsorship is important, and I want people to see the value of priority too, in that their wait time also affects their need for sponsorship. So really, I want to change the culture, and I want to bring down wait times to as small as we can get them, really.
Yes, well said. Well said. Well, with that, our webinar comes to a close. Thank you, Amy, for spending some time with us and for informing our advocate ministry. I truly do feel like that was accomplished tonight. Thank you also to all of you listening in live, and for those of you in the future listening to the recording, thank you for joining us as well. We're grateful to be serving alongside you as we release children from poverty in Jesus' name. So again, thanks for joining us, and we'll see you next month at our January webinar featuring Scott Todd. And good night.
Thank you, everybody. Good night.